No, we sold worldwide about 100 million records, which isn't nothing. You know, the rock and rollers, they sell that in 2 days. But I enjoyed Mexico, I enjoyed Paris, New York last year.
Everybody recalls Perry Coe as the kindest fellow on TV. Then something remarkable happened in 14 seconds in 1957 that confirmed it. But there is a darker story to tell. He referred to his hit records as crap and would not have anything to do with awards for selling millions of records. His road rage was a surprise. His children brawled in court over his estate during his dying hours. And that moment in the pool, it wasn't all about being a gentleman. It was about dominance, something Coe never had in his own life. Perry Como was born on May 18, 1912, to a small village called Canonsburg, a mere 20 miles southwest of Pittsburgh. His parents had immigrated from Italy a mere 2 years before in 1910. Perry was the seventh of 13 siblings, and his father worked long hours in a tin plate mill. He made only around $175 a month, which was hardly sufficient to feed a large family. They used only Italian in the house, and as Perry went to school when he was 6 years old, he had to learn English all over again. Despite being poor, music and religion were always at the forefront of their life. At age 10 in 1922, Perry landed his first job at Steve Fragapane's barber shop. He received only 50 cents a week. He opened up the shop in the morning before school and cleaned the floors after school. He had to wake up early enough to stoke the wood stove, then dash to school, then back again to rub mirrors and tidy up. He was so tiny that he had to stand on a wooden box to even cut hair. By 13 years old in 1925, he already had his own chair in the shop and was already cutting hair like an expert. His money was sorely needed at home. His passion for music began even earlier. At about 3 years old, he was already attempting to play songs on a second-hand organ his father had purchased for a mere $3. In spite of having to shop for groceries on credit, the family managed to find space for that organ. Perry would spend several hours playing it by ear. His father, who sang when he was off work, wanted all his children to learn to play music, and Perry most took to it. He learned guitar, trombone, and more without taking a formal voice lesson. However, it wasn't always easy. During Perry's teenage years, he lost a week's pay at a game of dice. The money was significant, and he was ashamed. He hid in his room, too embarrassed to face his parents. When he finally emerged and told his dad, he prepared himself for wrath. But his father said something that Perry never, ever forgot. You can make a mistake. Just don't do any worse than this. That lesson taught Perry about forgiveness, and it made him for life. In addition to continuing to work as a barber, Perry was also the trombone player for the Canonsburg Italian band. He performed at weddings, parades, and church functions. The band was directed by Stan Vinton, whose son Bobby Vinton would later become a renowned singer. Perry would sing as he cut hair as well, particularly love songs, and gained the nickname the Singing Barber. Grooms would ask him to sing when he was preparing their weddings. His advice would jump by $20 or $30 for those engagements. At 14 years old in 1926, Perry had his own barbershop and was making $125 a week, equivalent to more than $2,000 a week today. A Greek cafe owner in the neighborhood had given him space in his establishment. Perry's barbershop was always busy owing to his singing. He had to employ 2 other barbers just to deal with the throng. Then something serious went wrong. His dad, Pietro, got a bad heart condition and was no longer able to work. Perry and his brothers were now the breadwinners. He used the money he earned from barbering to cover rent, food, as well as music lessons for his brothers. Despite all the responsibility, Perry never gave up singing. He was inspired by Bing Crosby and sang at work. The people enjoyed his singing voice. Sons of Italy-type local groups began inviting him to sing. They offered to pay him $5 or $10 for each performance, which was great money for a teenager at the time. He first encountered Roselle Boland in 1929 when he was 17 and she was 16. He sang More Than You Know, gazing at her the entire time. They started to fall in love, but Perry did not move too fast. He waited for 4 years because he wanted to ensure that his business could sustain a family. They did, however, finally marry on July 31st, 1933. He was 21 and she was 20, and they were married for 65 years. But almost immediately after the wedding, Perry had a gigantic choice to make. While on vacation in Cleveland, a band leader, Freddie Carlo, heard him singing and made him a job offer. The wages only worked out to $28 a week, a huge cut from the $125 he was earning. Perry declined. He did not think giving up his business for something that could be a gamble was idiotic. Even when Carlo phoned once again, he continued to refuse. Still, however, his friends and Roselle continued to prod him to think again. At last, Carlo threatened he would offer the position to someone else. Roselle told him she'd be heartbroken forever if he missed it. That convinced Perry to shut down his barbershop in August 1933. He signed with the band. He went on to say he was less than 24 hours from walking away from it for good. But the start was difficult. Perry and Roselle could just about get by on $28 per week. She couldn't even go on the road with him initially. Nevertheless, his dad said to him, "You'll never know if you don't try." That gave Perry encouragement. In 1936, another setback struck him with devastating force. In a recording session, a Decca Records executive came by and said, "Get rid of that kid." He believed Perry sounded too close to Bing Crosby, already signed to Decca. Perry told him it was like a knife in the heart. But the band leader, Ted Williams, would not have it. He told Perry that if Perry didn't sing, there wouldn't be a recording session at all. That allegiance preserved Perry's career, although the Crosby copy label dogged him for years. Perry confessed so later. He was copying him. Then WGN Radio nearly dropped the band's broadcasts in 1936, 1937. They complained about Perry's not being clear in his singing, and fans were unable to decipher words. Ted Williams played back tapes, and Perry found it was so. That devastated him, but Williams instructed him to ditch the tricks and simply sing from the heart. And that altered everything. Perry started working on the smooth, natural voice that would characterize his sound, but touring pressures were savage. In 1940, Perry did something that nearly cost him his career. His wife was having a baby, and while performing in a live show, he excused himself mid-performance to attend to her. The band was outraged. It almost got him fired. But Perry didn't regret it. Family was first always. By 1942, all the constant traveling took its toll on him. World War II started, and Williams enlisted in the Army, dissolving the orchestra. Perry was so exhausted that he went back to Canonsburg. He even began negotiating for a new barbershop lease. He was prepared to give up music. He informed Roselle, but she wasn't interested. She encouraged him to continue. Subsequently, he uttered the words, "If it weren't for her, I'd have the best barbershop in town." What had happened, however, was a surprise. The General Artists Corporation contacted him with an offer. They would like him to have his own radio show for $100 per week and sign with RCA Victor to record. On March 12, 1943, he made his first solo broadcast on CBS. RCA wanted somebody to stand up to Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby, and they were hoping Perry would be that voice. Only 3 days after he signed, he went on and recorded his first solo recording, which was Goodbye Sue. But it didn't work. It didn't even have music to accompany him because of the 1942 to 1944 musician strike. Just vocals, and people just didn't latch onto it. He became discouraged. It became so bad that he nearly quit cutting hair for good. But 1945 was a different story. On July 3rd, 1945, he made a recording of a song called Till the End of Time, which was based on a Chopin piece. The record was released on July 30th and reached the Billboard charts by August 9th. It didn't merely do well, it remained on the charts for 17 weeks and remained at number 1 for 10 of them. It was his first number 1 single and his first song to sell more than 1 million. In fact, it sold more than 2 million. At the same time, another one of his songs, If I Loved You, was also selling more than 1 million. That made him the first pop singer ever to have 2 songs selling more than 2 million copies simultaneously. People claim that the success of Till the End of Time somehow coincided with the mood in America following the death of President Roosevelt in April. People were seeking comfort, and Perry's voice provided that. He was offered jobs in Hollywood, and MGM contracted him to a 7-year film contract. He appeared in movies such as Something for the Boys in 1944 and Dollface in 1945, but he did not enjoy Hollywood. At one point at a birthday party for big studio chief Louis B. Mayer, Perry was instructed to sing Happy Birthday before everybody. He didn't feel like a trained monkey. Following the song, he had an eye-to-eye with Mayer and called him in front of all the guests. His contract was terminated immediately after. Harry admitted later that he orchestrated the whole event. He disliked the Hollywood system and needed out. He likened quitting movies to breaking free. He never had to look back. Not even in music was he always contented. Perry gained a reputation for disliking the songs that he was asked to record. He once described some of them as crap. At recording sessions, he was said to have looked unhappy, as if he had just put something sour in his mouth. He'd record 1 or 2 times and leave. He wished to sing Broadway tunes and classics, not goofy jingles. In 1961, he put out the album by request, which was loaded with songs he really loved but didn't sell. Meanwhile, RCA Victor continued to sell millions of his other albums. Beginning in 1943, they sold an average of 4 million Como records annually. In 1946, they sold 4 million in 1 week alone. In a 1998 interview, he remarked, "Those songs paid for my house and put my kids through college, so I can't complain too much. But if I had my way, I'd have spent my whole career singing the Great American Songbook instead of crooning about hot diggity dogs." He discovered a new home on radio. On December 11th, 1944, he began hosting a weekly weeknight 15-minute program named the Chesterfield Supper Club at 7 p.m. A man named Doug Storr got the idea after hearing Perry on a radio and recorded a demo with him. Initially, even the advertising agency didn't desire Perry. They desired another person. But Doug campaigned for him and landed him the job a week before the show went on the air. On December 24th, 1948, NBC decided to experiment. They took cameras into the radio studio and broadcast the show on television. It was only intended to be a 3-Friday test, but it was so popular that they continued. By September 8th, 1949, the show became a daily TV program. Perry was officially a television star, although initially he claimed he felt uneasy on television. To relax, he would pretend he was simply conversing with relatives in his living room. In 1950, he transferred to CBS and modified the show into The Perry Co. Show. It was on 3 days a week for 15 minutes initially, but then evolved to a full hour. During the 1956 to 1957 season, his program was the sole NBC program in the Nielsen Top 10. He received 5 consecutive Emmy Awards between the years 1955 to 1959 and a Christopher Award in 1956. It was one of the first programs to be broadcast in color. Perry and Jackie Gleason had a friendly ratings war. Each week the victor would call the other and kid about it. On March 14th, 1958, he made history when his song Catch a Falling Star was the first ever to receive a gold record from the RIA, which indicated that it sold more than 1 million copies. Perry, however, disliked the song. When the announcer read the wrong name during the live award show, he called it Chase a Falling Star. Perry then sang a humorous rendition of the song to demonstrate how much he hated it. Although he later won a Grammy for the song that same year, he never went back on his decision. He wanted to be a barber once more.